Ask Reddit. Teachers, what was the best smartass response from a student you have heard? I witnessed a rather sad one. In my chemistry class sophomore year, one of my friends was going through some family issues, and his dad just left for a year or so. The kid was acting up in class and the teacher was like, "Do you want me to call your dad?" And he was like, if he picks up to tell him to come home soon. Not a teacher, but this happened in an upper-level French class where you can only speak French. If you speak English, the teacher scolds you in French. My friend walked in a few minutes late for a quiz, and wasn't allowed to take it. My friend looked at the teacher and said, in English, "That's bullshit." The teacher looked back angrily and said, also in English, "What did you just say?" My friend, "En français monsieur." He got kicked out of the class. A kid in my math class would sleep on his desk. One day the teacher called on him to answer a problem on the chalkboard. He woke up, solved the problem on the board with zero difficulties, and then just went back to sleep. The teacher repeated the same thing a few times with similar results, and then just let him sleep the rest of the year. I've told this story on Reddit before, but this really shy kid that doesn't really speak much was getting picked on by this mean girl when the teacher tells her be nice to him, he might be your boss someday. Without missing a beat he replies, "No thanks, I don't want to be a pimp when I grow up." My history teacher would spend half the class making jokes directed at the students. One student in particular always took the jokes on the chin and never really made any comebacks. Eventually, the teacher called him out and jokingly lectured him about standing up for himself. He ended his rant with, "You've gotta be a man. You've gotta be like me." The student replied with, "Well, which one? Do you want me to be a man or do you want me to be like you?" Edit. For those wondering, this happened back when I was in high school in the late 80s. It's one of those moments I will never, ever forget. D. This is sort of a flip from the question, but there was this awesome history teacher I had freshman year of high school who was just always in an amazing mood. We'll call him Mr. Smith. One day everyone is sitting in class waiting for the tardy bell to ring when a kid sneaks a condom onto the door handle. The bell rings and Mr. Smith walks into the room, grabs the handle to close the door, and pulls the condom off of it. Looks at the condom helmet for a split second and stuffs it into his pocket while saying, "Thanks, I'll need this later." We had a teacher that would always threaten to phone our home if we were misbehaving. Which she promptly stopped after. Teacher, what would your mother say if I called home right now? Student, she would say hello. I'm not a teacher, but I had a friend in school who was always pretty dramatic. She actually did have IBS though. So we're in this bitchy teacher's class and she keeps asking to use the bathroom. The teacher says no, my friend's like, "I have IBS though." And the teacher is like, "Tell me what those initials mean and I will let you go." So she screams, "IT means I have to shit," and takes off out of the room. In high school, one of my teachers was having a disagreement with a student. I can't remember what it was about, but finally, the teacher asks him if she wanted her to call his mother. The student replies, "Do it then. My mama will agree with me too." The teacher then asks him to leave her class. He goes, "You know what, I'm gonna call my mom for you." He then whips out his cell phone and calls his mom on speaker. "Hey, Ma, this teacher wants to talk to you." The whole class just lost it. Well, this one was during coaching classes for entrance exams. The maths teacher reduced a given problem to a simpler form and challenged the students, so this expression doesn't fit any of the given standard forms for us to find the particular integral. So what do you propose we do? A kid from the back shouted the next question. Not a teacher, but witnessed as a student. We had a substitute who was leafing through the yearbook and got to the senior superlatives. Our school mascot was the Eagles. She started reading some if then aloud and said, "Oh, that's nice, Sarah." Most school-spirited a student answered back, "Yeah, because she's always spread eagle." The substitute couldn't keep from laughing, as much as she tried not to. Not me, but a colleague told me this story. It was one of his first years teaching, so he was about 22 to 24 at the time. It was a junior high science class and he told a student to stop messing around and get back to work. The student's response: "Man, I got bitches older than you." I've taught preschool for years, and one of my favorite dad responses to children who were being whiny just to whine is the "Hi, I'm your teacher. Egg, I'm thirsty. Hi, thirsty. I'm your teacher." Anyway, one day, after a long week, I sat down to lunch with my class, preschool, remember? 4 or 5-year-olds, and say to a child, we'll call him Tommy, "Boy, Tommy. I'm really tired today." Without skipping a beat, he swallows his mac and cheese, looks me right in the eyes and says, "Hi, really tired. I'm Tommy." That was the day I knew I had taught him all I could. My sister, who is a teacher, was taking her kindergarten class through the lunch line. Well, this day was St. Patrick's Day, so there were green cupcakes. My sister told the class, jokingly, "Don't eat too many cupcakes, or you'll turn green." A young black boy looks up at her and says, "Miss Carey, I ain't never seen a green brother before." I had my class of working class kids at an art gallery. As we waited for our tour to begin, we played on the small playground near the door. A prep school kid in a uniform approached two of my boys and said, "I bet I'm smarter than you are." I watched to make sure no blood was drawn. My students can hold their own pretty much anywhere and they don't accept insults casually. But they were cool. "No, you're not. Are you in grade 2? The boy said he was in. One of my boys said, "So then we're all grade 2. So we're all grade 2 smart." He went back to climbing the monkey bars. But the prep school kid continued, "I know I'm smarter. Let's do some math and I'll prove it." The toughest kid in my room looked this guy square in the eye and said, "Well, I'm smart enough not to do the math when I'm having fun on a playground." In HS, our functions and relations teacher would always start to say something, forget it and say, "I lost my train of thought." Well, one day a buddy of mine replies, "It's okay sir, there were no important passengers on board." Edit, for those who are asking, functions and relations are a subset of finite math. Think of an entire course on the quadratic equation and its various offshoots. A kid mocked me when I said, "Don't do that." I started to yell at him and he said, "No man, that's a song." He then spontaneously came up with a rap song called "Don't Do That" and his friends started making beats. I was no longer mad. My friend, Brian, was in his homeroom class back in high school. The topic of abortion came up as everyone was asking each other if/why they're either against or pro-abortion. We're in Texas, so you can assume the ideas and opinions of the majority of the class. So my friend is a very intelligent and quiet fellow, minding his own business in a corner of the room. The class turns to him to get his opinion on the matter. "Someone, Brian, you've been quiet over there. So what about you? Are you pro-abortion?" Brian, "Well, I wouldn't say I'm pro. But I'm pretty good with a coat hanger." Jaws drop, the room is silent as everyone is registering what just happened. Glad I made it to school today. A student in my Spanish class was sleeping, like always. The teacher finally got tired of it and tried to embarrass him by waking him up and yell at him in Spanish. The student responded with, "I'm back here minding my own business, not causing any sort of distractions at all, and you decide to stop everyone's learning by trying to make me look stupid. We all know I have no idea what you're saying, so please stop disrupting the class and let me go back to not bothering anyone." She never said another word to him. Let me point out that I'm female since people will assume I'm a guy. I taught in an inner-city school. We were talking about prime numbers, so I would have kids give me a number and we'd work out if the number was a prime number on the board. One kid wasn't paying attention, so me being a young teacher, I thought I'd catch him off guard and call on him. It went something along the lines of, "Mark, do you have a number?" "Huh. I need your number." "Sheet, play it cool, girl. We can talk after class." The whole room lost their shit and I turned red from embarrassment. They then laughed at how red I got. Our teacher was teaching us about the states of matter, solid, liquid and gas. He was talking about how a solid you can break into littler pieces, but how you can't do the same to liquids or gases. So I blurted out, "But you can break wind." I still talk to that teacher and he says that was the best part of his teaching career. This was in 6th grade. A kid left a bag of flaming hot Cheetos under his desk in my first period class. I sarcastically announced to my second period class that if you leave any food in my class I am going to eat it. Holding up the bag of Cheetos. One kid respond, "Well, someone should have left your fetasa salad." Student A says to Student B, "Dude, shut the fuck up." Staff says, "Student A, we don't talk that way. In the future find a more appropriate way of expressing yourself." Student A says to staff, "Oh, sorry," then turns to Student B and says, "Dude, would you please shut the fuck up?" Spanish class in high school. Two guys who grew up in Spanish-speaking families were goofing off at the back of the class. One guy says that he could stand the weight of another person standing on his stomach, and the other guy, who was probably just shy of 200 pounds, doesn't believe him. So the first guy gets on the ground in the back of the class, and the other guy gets up and stands on his stomach. The teacher sees this and immediately yelled at the guy on the ground to get back into his seat. Without missing a beat, he says, "I can't, he's standing on me." The other guy doesn't move because he wasn't yelled at. Meanwhile, the teacher continues to be upset that the guy on the ground isn't listening to her. My math teacher said, "If you don't understand, ask me. There are no stupid questions." Where a guy in my class quickly responded, "Is that so? Do you cut your toenails with a chainsaw?" I had a teacher tell a classmate no drinks in class. He got up from his seat, picked up the teacher's drink, and deposited in the garbage with his drink. She sent him to the office. I'm not a teacher, but this happened in one of my classes a few weeks back. My math teacher is a pretty chill guy and likes to share personal info every now and then, so he decides to tell the class he is getting married this summer break. Most of the class congratulates him and wishes him well. This one girl from the front of the class shouts out, "It has been legal for a year now, why did you wait this long?" The whole class starts fucking dying laughing and the teacher is just sitting there with his mouth open. Just yesterday actually. One of my classes is fun in that we give each other hard times, but all in good fun and accomplish a lot. A girl starts giggling uncontrollably for no reason, and she's a bit of an airhead, so I asked her if she saw something shiny and if that entertained her. Another boy jumps in and says, "Yeah mister, your head." I'm going bald. I wanted to pretend to be mad but it was just too damn funny. Why are you all talking? Because you're not. Second grade. The kid was sent out of the room. This is in regards to the rule, don't talk when the teacher's talking. I'm a diving coach and I have 4 divers I'm responsible for, so I don't usually get swimmers' contact info. We were on our way to a meet and one of the swimmers was not on the bus. I said, "Who has redacted S number?" "No one." So obviously I got mad. "This is your teammate and not one of you girls has her phone number to text her?" So one of my divers chimed in, "Why don't you coach?" I said, "I have 4 divers, I don't need another 30 high school girls' numbers in my phone." She replied, "Ha ha ha, you wish." Easily the best burn of my coaching career. Not a teacher but witnessed as a student. There were literally 30 seconds left of class and my buddy starts to pack up. The teacher didn't seem to mind, but when the bell rang and buddy got up to leave, the teacher said the classic line, "The bell doesn't dismiss you." I do, and buddy just continues to leave, gets in the doorway of the class and says, "If it decides when I come, it decides when I leave," and just leaves the class. In middle school, in history class, this happened. Girl, "Hey Mr. C, how do you spell word IDR?" Mr. C, DICTIONERY. She writes it down, stares at it for a moment trying to comprehend why it doesn't look right, gets pissed at the teacher. The class is dying, the teacher laughing as well. Tangentially related, smartass response from the teacher on behalf of the student. Had a student that came back a couple of weeks out of class. The counselor let the teachers know that his father had passed and he was having a rough time. I pulled him aside after class one day, told him not to worry about any of the work he missed, focus on getting caught up in your other classes, I'll make things work out here. I was his 10th grade English teacher, we had already taken the end of year exam, as far as the state was concerned he was done, and that was good enough for me. The kid was straight A's until his dad passed. Cut to a few weeks later, I'm called into the counselor's office for a meeting with the student's other teachers. I double check and he's been doing great in class, and work I've assigned has been turned in on time, even though I told him he didn't have to, so I have no idea what's going on. Come to find out his other teachers weren't as lenient on the makeup work as I was. He had gotten behind in all his other classes and had stayed behind, now he was in danger of failing everything but my class, he'd have to repeat the year save for English. The counselor asks me what I did to help the student. Oh, well, I told him not to worry about anything he missed, and that as far as I was concerned he was already caught up and he could do his best in class going forward. One of the other teachers backed, "I don't see why we needed Mr. Hex Dragon's input, he just let the kid skip out on work. That's not helpful." I replied, "The kid's dad just fucking died, you really think the last 6 weeks worth of history matters to him in the slightest?" The counselor smiled and pointed at me. I invited Mr. Hex Dragon because I knew he would say some things I'm not allowed to say. This isn't going to be as good as when spoken out loud, but I had a friend who got into an argument with their teacher about the whole I before E except after C thing, and if it sounds like an A it's A. My friend told his teacher that it wasn't always true. So she got defensive and started going off about her lit degree and how she knows more than him. His response was, "No, seriously, there are some weird words where that rule doesn't apply. She keeps saying that it wasn't true and he kept saying the same thing over and over. There are some weird words where that doesn't apply. He did this like 5 times and finally, she snapped and yelled, "Like what?" He just yells weird. She permanently kicked him out of her class for being a smartass. In a high school physics class, we were learning about friction and what varies how strong it is. So, the teacher asks, "So as an engineer, what would be some of the hard parts of designing, say, racing tires?" Some kid in the back says, "Getting out of bed in the morning." For context, this was at a Catholic school, and the teacher, a very stern fire and brimstone nun, and the student, an extremely liberal Anglican, had been at each other's nerves all year. After correcting the teacher on something she had gotten wrong, the nun said something along the lines of, "I hope you learn to enjoy the heat because it's going to be very hot when you end up in the deepest level of hell." And entirely unruffled, without a moment's hesitation she responded, "Actually, according to Dante's Inferno the deepest level of hell is made of ice, but don't worry, I'll bring a jacket." I was showing Cosmos in a break between classes and one kid seemed particularly enthralled by the tardigrade, so his wise-ass friend goes, "Small minds are amused by small things." The kid retorted, "Why do you think I hang out with you?" The whole class went bananas and even I went over and high-fived that kid. It was a great class, the victim was laughing as hard as anyone. I miss those kids. My grandson who lives with my wife and I was sent to the office one day for breaking the dress code, no belt. The principal asked why he didn't wear it. To which he replied, "My crackhead mother stole it and I didn't have time to get another." The principal got super mad and called us to tell us what happened, and what he had said. I confirmed his story. Well, his crack addict mother came to visit last night and we didn't realize it was gone until this morning. I could audibly hear him gasp over the phone and immediately started apologizing, and every time I see him now he mentions it and apologizes. The kid in my class asks the teacher how to spell opposition and after she says OPP a friend of mine yells, "Yeah, you know me."